This is a video of silhouettes. Here we have a Trident Maple root over rock in a semi-cascade form, and lots of character in this tree. Lots of twists and turns in the upper branches. The roots are clinging nicely to the rock. It's developed over the years pretty well, and at one point I wanted more roots to develop in this area, so I covered it with the moss. And you can see the root from this side. And I've done some trimming on it already, just kind of pre-trimming, cutting back certain areas. And in the spring I'll do some more trimming as the buds begin to swell, and even as my mindset changes about, I guess you can say, the direction of this tree. And here we have a Trident Maple, and it's in a upright position with lots of branches. The branches down low are smaller than, thinner, if you will, than I really care for them to be, and so I'm letting the extension grow out. And in order to thicken these up relative to these in the upper branches, I'll let this branch and that branch grow out more with minor trimming, like at the tips, but nothing drastic. And I'll trim this in the upper areas more often, and hopefully that'll balance out the energy, and so that these branches will increase in girth. Also, I move the branches around a bit, and that's flexing the cambium, and so that builds up material also in the branch. This is actually closing up pretty nicely, and pretty soon I'll go in here and score the margins again of the bark, and where that callus is rolling over, it will continue to close that hole up. I'll also treat it with fungicide in that area, clean it out of whatever materials that's in there. This was damaged sun blister. It gets pretty hot, drastically hot around here in the summertime, and I believe at the time I had this in a more shaded area, and when I brought it out into the sun, it caused damage to the tender root surface here, because at the time a lot of this was under the soil, and then it was at the time it was recently uncovered. So we have more silhouettes, and this tree I really like, and it's been with me quite some time now, and I just see it developing really nicely over the years, and I don't know, we'll see how it goes from this point. The root mass there is kind of interesting, to say the least. but if I get around to it this spring, I'll go in and do some root work to ensure that I get fresh, new, healthy roots growing. Because when you get roots circling like this, sometimes you get roots that are going inside of other roots, and it could in fact gird itself, and if there are not enough active feeder roots, then the plant will succumb to starvation. It will die. How about this? This is Lady. You can see that stick right there. I put that in there until I can get around to wiring it, and if I don't wire it, at least it's in the position, a more upright position that I find appealing. I've got the branches coming across horizontally, and this was laying probably right across there, and I decided to elevate that as a, I guess you can say, a center canopy, and create a taller apex. And of course these are sarissas, and I've got to come in here again and cut these back and see how that's going to work out for me. But yep. And I've pulled branches down with wire, and see this blue twist tie. I lost this branch a while back. As a matter of fact, I lost this branch when it was in a different pot, not even on the rock here. It was just in a separate oval pot, and I was really enjoying the plant. Took it to the bonsai club, and shortly after that, this branch started dying out. The plant started suffering, so I did all of my emergency care, and the plant did survive. And of course, this was a rooted cutting that I took off of this tree, so that's why it's kind of significant to me, because that's my main tree, and that tree is a rooted cutting out of the top of that. You can see where the black spot is. It was, and that's the tree paint sealer. And so I have that tree, and Lady over there, which are actually the same plant, but this tree in the yard here is actually a cutting off of this tree. And so I planted it there about 30 years ago now. We'll just use a round figure. And so that's kind of the history of that. I've got other trees from other sources, so that I don't have just one particular strain of that Trident Maple. Okay, so that way I'm kind of protected if something happens and I lose trees. And hopefully something will survive. But anyway, I enjoy silhouettes, and I got that growing way up there. Yep. But eventually I'll cut this back and turn this into a shorter tree, and I guess that's in the area that I'll be working with is close to 18-20 inches. So I'll show you this from that side. And again, that's my main tree, and I'm considering how I'll be trimming this up. It doesn't really need to be repotted, but it really needs a haircut. So I'm deciding on what I'll do with that. And this little jewel, you can see the bones in it, and all these trees have been seen before in other videos, but I'm not sure of the silhouettes being seen in them. And this is the time that I use to really assess the plant and to see what I want to trim out, what I want to keep. And again, when I'm growing plants, and if I believe that I'm going to sell the plant, I leave more branches than I would possibly need or desire. Crabapple, and that is probably 38 to 40 inches tall. Nice base for a crabapple. And of course, this was a store-bought box store crabapple, and the bottom is grafted, but it has a pretty nice transition compared to a lot that I've seen. And crab apples that I've started from cuttings has virtually no taper. Okay, so to have this amount of taper in the base, and where the graft is not so bulky and obvious, is pretty good. And that's a fig, which I am considering trimming out all of this down to that branch back there, and then leaving this out here, cutting that deep on an angle, and leaving this. And then I'll see which way I need to rewire that. But those are some of the silhouettes. These are small elms that I'm working in cascade configurations. And this tree right here is, I guess you can say, the sidekick, the partner to that tall upright Trident that I had in the front. And they're the same age. I just cut them up differently when I dug them out of the ground. So another Trident Maple, and here we have this root over rock Trident Maple. This is another that I really like working with. And this is actually the first season I've had this around. Not a whole lot of ramifications on the branches, but nice taper in the trunk, nice height, and even the cutback on this apex is starting to develop pretty nicely. So for what it is, it's doing well. And that's the back side of that Trident right there. And you can see the major scar there, but it's healing over. And you can see the yellow in the sealant that I had on there. And I went in once this year and rescored that area so that that cadmium and the callus would heal over. So this is the back side of that tree. And that's my formerly air layered Japanese green maple, large trunk. And I came in yesterday and removed some of the lashing, the anchors, to keep that branch extended, because it would curve upward if I didn't do that. And pretty soon it will lock in, and it's going to be okay. So, but some of the trees I have here have not gone into its winter mode yet, because it's shaded under this loquat tree. And that's my plant that I call my vase style Japanese green maple, because a lot of the branches are lower and wider on this one in the trunk. And that tree, the leaves are pretty unappealing right now, but the tree is healthy. It's just the end of the season. And this is my little small container. That's that 8-inch pot. I think it's 6-inch pot. And that tree right there is close to 10 years old now. 9-10 years old. That it's always been in a, this is the largest pot it's been in. And I grew it several years in a little 4-inch pot. Then I think I up potted it to something just a little bit smaller than this for one season, and then I put it in here. And but again, a lot of these plants, they're the same age, the Trident maples, that is. And it's just how you grow the plant. I worked on some figs, this fig tree right here. I hope that turns out okay. But anyway, I cleaned out the pot, the roots, fertilized it, repositioned some branches, and it's looking pretty good. There's another fig tree right there that I reworked, cut that side, and I'll probably go in and trim that out some more. But that's that. And then this fig tree here, I haven't rewired it yet, but I've already got in mind how I want to work that. And I'm going to come back in here and trim this out at an angle to this apex. So that's pretty much that. And there's my Trident maple. For some reason I keep thinking about a foot going into a shoe, that angle. But I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a nice canopy developing this spring coming out. I'm going to come back in here shortly and remove this branch. There's 3 branches, actually 4 branches protruding from the same spot. And so to reduce the likelihood of a huge bulge developing here, I'm going to remove this, keep this branch and that branch, because they're on the other side of that, my viewing area, and that'll give me a better perspective. And then the branches out here, I'll wire these down a little bit, wire that down just a little bit, And I'll probably let this grow freely for a little while so that it can get a little thicker, and then I'll just have that nice canopy across that way. And though I want to keep this, I'm not sure if I'll keep it because of the area here, how high up this branch is. If it had been in here somewhere, I would have been a lot more pleased about it, but or had it been actually connected here, that would have been the hot diggy right there. But anyway, I want this to girth up a little bit more, and so I flex this and move it around. And by the way, I've treated all these plants here with fungicide and pesticide this week, so we're doing good. And as you can see, I've still got color in some of the trees. It's Trident Maple, and the red here is Trident Maple. The golden and green is Trident Maple. But again, the way you fertilize the plants, where they're located, makes a difference in how the leaves are developing. That tree was in a lot of shade, it was protected, and of course I recently moved it, and so these little fellas here were in shades also, and they just came out here in this open area recently. That's been in the open. This has been in the open a lot, and again, there's the inherent variance in the plants themselves anyway, so but that's just the way it is. This is the Chinese elm, not fully in silhouette, but it's getting there. And I've got this Zelkova right here. And I cut this thing back many times in the season, probably between July and now. I've probably cut this thing back 4 or 5 times, and the ramification is coming along nicely. So that's that, and we'll see how it goes as far as these branches remaining on the plant, or if I'll just keep an upper canopy, just pull these down more and possibly remove these, or 2 or 3. Well, yeah, because there's 4 branches in this total lower area. The one on the back, this one, that little stub, and this. And of course, they'll just be rooted cuttings eventually if I were to cut them back between now and the early spring, because they look like nice trees on their own. More color rather than full silhouette, but this is coming along pretty good as far as the branching, the thickness of the branch, and the ramification. This tree I actually had in the ground for a couple of seasons, growing root over rock, and at the beginning of in the spring of 2021, I potted it up. You can see I've got wire here to anchor that in. This thing, I don't know if it wants to drop leaves or not. That's my exposed roots. Yep. And so I'm working on this tree quite a lot, actually. At one point I wired it, and between the wire and the humidity and the fungus, I ended up having some issues with this branch here in particular, which I can do without in the design, because the main feature here is the exposed roots and then the movement, apex, and a couple of branches. Well, I've got that. This was just something to give, I guess you can say, a point of interest to. And I may yet remove that in this season coming up. But I had to do a lot of work on this fungicide, pesticide, removing scales and callus from the plant. And it's really healthy. It's doing well. The callus is developing, and pretty soon I'll go back in here, put it in some good soil, and enjoy it for a few seasons, and see what happens from that point. Little root over rock, on the rock. There's 4 trees right there. 4 trees. Bonsai style says 3 trees or 5 trees, odd trees. There are 4 trees in that rock that I carved, because it's my rock, my trees. I want 4 trees. But the way I got it lined up breaks up the movement. These 2 are over here. That kind of separated. I could have clumped these a little closer and isolated this one larger tree a bit more, but that's the idea. If you're going to use an even number of trees, you put an odd number together, and then the odd man out is the even single number. This little thing, I'm kind of liking it. It was a little rooted cutting that I actually got from a friend, and I planted in the ground a few years, and I expected this thing to be about 4 or 5 times as large as it is, and it just sits there, and it's fattening up a little bit, but it's like, yo, do something. So I pulled it out, stuck it on a rock, secured it to the rock. You can see the wire right here, see some roots. And it's growing well. It's healthy. It had lots of leaves on it. I just trimmed it up recently and actually wired it and did some more work on it. So that's about that. And one more silhouette over here. That is a Trident Maple, and kind of put that together, and we'll see how that develops over time. The idea is to kind of make that into a clump, and I've got these little seedlings lashed to these root pieces that are actually higher up on this and exposed. So I'm trying to use what's on the plant as the plant is already, rather than cutting those off and it's just part of the way I do stuff, experiment, trying to work with what the plant has, to be reminded of where the plant was when I started messing with it, more so than just to change the plant and make it look great. You know, I'm using what the plant offers me as far as challenges and opportunities. And here we have just a few smaller trees in silhouette. They have a long way to go. The one back there, I like that, the way I guess you can say that lower trunk is split at the bottom and has that movement swinging out. So this actually was a rooted cutting that I struck, and I started growing it kind of at an angle. Here we have a few more silhouettes, Trident Maples. These are recent jobs that I just cleaned up. I'm using guy wires, pulling these down. This thing has lots of potential. It's a little short, stubby fellow. I've got that branch, which could be an apex, coming back over the main trunk, or that. This was a large piece that it could have been a main trunk, but I opted to use this taper in here coming off of this trunk versus using this up here, and I would have lost all of that. So what I did was just cut out an angle, and I'll probably come back in here again once I get a branch coming out from here. Once it's secure and growing well, I'll come back and trim this out and thin that out a little bit more. And there you have it. But I think that's a pretty nice little tree right there. And whoever gets this tree, they're going to have a nice little treat. And that's probably 24, 25 inches tall right there. Nice base on the trunk, about 3 inches, not counting this root piece here. And this branch is unusual, and that's why I kind of like this, to have that branch that high up and then to have it cascade down. Got an apex potential here, lots of branching with lots of ramification on it already. And so this is really going to be a nice plant. Now this branch, I'm not going to cut it right now because I want it to thicken up. But if I were to sell this, I need this branch out of the way, and I want it to stay for a while. I mean, the new owner is going to do what they're going to do, but if I keep the plant around here, I want it to continue to grow. And so I'm allowing this branch to grow and to move upward like here. And it has some downward movement here, so I can work this for another couple of seasons to bring this down until I get a little bit more girth on it. And not quite in silhouette, but I've worked this here recently to get that angle, and I've flayed these branches to get a wider canopy. And probably in the spring I'll go back in, cut these down for more ramification, and I'll clean this up a little more. So anyway, that's about it. I'm out of time on this device. All right, thanks.